and then they try to do all this heavy studying at night. You'll find that if those kids, when after they've had a long day, clean themselves up, get ready, and head to bed early, the hours before midnight doubles. They can get up 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and at that time, the mind has been reset, the mind is refreshed, and they go right ahead and study, and their retention process would be much higher. As a matter of fact, I was working with this one pastor, and I suggested that to him in helping him to put his sermon together. And later on, he shared with me that he was actually having more success putting the sermons together by attending to such simple precaution, going to bed early and waking up in the early hours in the morning when there's peace and quiet and that mind is refreshed. Does that make sense, saints? Good. Let's go into your meal. Let's go into the meal in terms of the menu planning. Now, you guys know that there's no set rule that says you have to eat cereal for breakfast, right? How many guys knew that? Raise your hand. There's no rule or law that says you have to eat cereal for breakfast. Technically speaking, if there's going to be a law, the law would be the heavier food would be, not that if there was going to be a law, there is a law, that the heaviest meals should be for breakfast. So as a matter of fact, you'll find that in the morning, and you wake up, you'll see that I'm downstairs and I'm eating rice and peas. You know, I'm eating all the heavy food that most people normally reserve for lunch. And there are also other times you may find that I do the granola and the traditional breakfast. But I go either way. I can eat hard food, I can eat lighter food. But there's no law to restrict you and say you can't eat a heavier meal for breakfast. Always try to start off with the heaviest meal for breakfast. And you know what I found? It's an amazing thing. If you eat a big, hearty breakfast, many times you do not need lunch. And if you do eat lunch, it's be a much smaller lunch. Okay? But you skip breakfast, I'm here to tell you, you'll be cleaning everything up. That everything that's in front of you, you'll be taking out when you don't eat breakfast. As a matter of fact, there are numerous studies on breakfast, not having breakfast out there. Such studies that show that individuals who don't eat breakfast, they tend to overindulge, they tend to overeat. Individuals who don't eat breakfast, they tend to have problems in terms of managing weight management. And there's some others out there, and I just can't recall some of the other things I've seen in reference to breakfast. Doc, are there anything that comes to your mind in terms of when one doesn't eat breakfast, some of the harmful effects? For children, they have cognitive impairment. They cannot concentrate. Okay, as Doc just mentioned, for kids in school, when they do not eat breakfast, they have problem concentrating. So you'll find that one of the key things you need to do with your children is to make sure that they eat a hearty breakfast and not these sugary snacks. Amen? You want a whole, well-balanced whole grain breakfast. Anything else you can think of, Doc, that comes to your mind off the top? As Doc mentioned, Constants and Diets and Food, page 173, it talks about making your breakfast the heartiest meal of the day. And as Doc mentioned, which is absolutely so obvious, you know, basically, if you're taking a flight from here to Trinidad, should you wait till you get to Trinidad to put the fuel in, or would you put the fuel in before you take off? You know, and it seems such a simple analogy, but if you really stop and think about it, you need the fuel, that's the breakfast food, to help you to make it through the day. And when you don't put that breakfast in, you're basically running that vehicle on empty. And as Doc says, it just makes sense. It just makes common sense that you'll do that fuel in the morning before you head off to work. Amen. Before you work the brain, before you work every facets of the body, it makes sense that you will intake breakfast. Are we making sense, saints? Amen. Okay. When one is eating breakfast now, let's set some principles here. How should one do breakfast in terms of the meal planning and so forth? How should one do it? Real simple, you know. Here's what you should do. Real simple, if you think of it. 3 to 5 servings of fruit. I have a sister, she's a dietitian. She's out in California, my little sis. And I'll call her from time to time, and she and I would bounce things off of each other. When she's working with vegetarians, sometimes she have a hard time figuring out what to do for vegans or vegetarians and so forth. So I'll give her some pointers. And then I'll say, what's new? What's new in the nutritional world? And then she'll tell me new principles that they're implementing, and we'll talk and so forth. And one of the things that, you know, we're talking about the proper ways in terms of servings and so forth. And what I realized from talking to my younger sister, what they have gone to is to try and figure out how to simplify things. You know, basically, they found that before, when they used to tell people all about this cup measurement, and people don't have time to do these things. So what they have learned to do basically is they have basically learned how to do things with hands in terms of portion sizes and different things along that line in terms of what they should do. And I'll give you a perfect example. And Al, if you look in the back there, at Elder Daly, yes. There's some simple things that one needs to do. And let me share with you some simple things, like a banana. Remember 3 to 5 servings? If you have a banana, okay, saints, let me just think of it this way. See my little pen right here? Think of this pen as being a banana, okay? If you can get both hands and the banana on the banana like this, okay? Both hands. How many servings? 2 servings. Medium fruit fit in the palm of a hand. How many servings? 1. Are we making sense there? 12 large grapes, 15 small grapes. You know, just simple things to help you with measurements and servings. And when you're dealing with 3 to 5 servings, don't confuse 3 to 5 servings with 3 to 5 different kinds of food. Am I making sense there? One of the things you need to keep in mind, no complex combinations. When you mix too many mixtures together, it actually causes war in the stomach. And as a result, the food sours and spoils. It is best to do simple combinations with your meal. Have you wondered why the meals that you've been given downstairs have been so simple? The simple things of God confounds the wise. You get more nourishment from those simple meals that we have been preparing you than when you have this smorgasbord presentation before. You know, a lot of time we have these big decorations with all these fruits and you know, and everybody just want to go and try a little of everything. Instant war in the stomach. I'll give you a perfect example. Potlucks. I'll tell you how I deal with potlucks. Whenever I know I'm going to a potluck, and especially if it's a good potluck, what I do, I walk in and I go right to the serving area, and I walk the whole area first before I select one item. And then what I do, I'll make a decision at that time, what am I going to eat? Am I going to eat fruits today, or am I going to eat vegetables? And if I'm going to do fruits, I'll make a decision at that time to pick according to a fruit meal. If I'm going to do vegetables, I'll make a decision at that time to pick according to a vegetable meal. Or my favorite dessert is apple pie. And you know, we have some natural homemade grown apples in my backyard, and we'll take that apple, and Mom will make these nice crusts for me, and she make my sweetener. You know, like how most people use sugar for the apple pie? All Mom uses is the apple juice concentrate to sweeten my apple pie. And so if there's apple pie, and I know it's good, wholesome apple pie, immediately all the rest of the food are going to be dictated by my apple pie. Oh, since you didn't hear me today. So what I'll do, and just to kind of give you an idea how I eat, I always do the raw or the live food first. The raw or slightly steamed food first. Is there like any law to say that that's the way it has to be done? Not necessary, but the reason why I do it first, as I read the counsel, one of the things it says when we do our salads and so forth, and we take our time and properly masticate it, there'll be less need for us to drink with the meal. Okay? So I found that when I do my salads and so forth first, when I use those items first and I properly chew them, because these items are high in water, or high in any food, liquid, or I should say, that prevents me from having the need of actually drinking with my meals or anything like that. Does that make sense? But one of the things that you'll find that I'll do, in addition to doing my fruit or vegetable first, I'll do my whole grains, my protein, whole carbs and proteins in between, and I'll complete my meal. I like to complete it with like some nuts or a slice or two of bread with some olive oil and so forth. I found that by keeping that fat, making sure that there's fat added to that meal, and I like to seal it off at the end. I put that fat at the end of the meal. I found that it's less likely for me to ever get hungry or to even have the urge to even consider looking at any other food. Okay? Many times I found that people get hungry between meals because they never add fats to their meal. And now, saints, listen. When I say add fats to their meal, grains have fat in them. Your fruits and your vegetables all have fat in them. But what I'm talking about specifically is where fat is more the predominant constituent within that food. Does that make sense? So we know that all of your grains are going to have some form of degree of fat in it, but I'm talking items where the major constituent is going to be fat, where the major constituent is going to be protein, major constituent is going to be carbohydrate, in terms of making a decision. So 3 to 5 servings, no complex mixtures. Think of your food as being colors. I'll tell you, when I learned of this principle made a night and day difference in terms of how I eat. Like, for example, like this morning, instead of eating a wide variety of fruits, I ate a good serving of watermelon. Good solid serving of watermelon. And then I think I might have had a banana in the end. Okay? So instead of doing banana, strawberries, good servings of watermelon. Went ahead and topped it off with a banana. And then I had some oatmeal with some raisins. And did I do anything else? Yes, I had some pistachio at the end. So just to kind of give you an idea what I had for breakfast this morning. Just something simple. And we all ate lunch together, so, whole grain cereal sweetened with fruit. Whole grain cereal sweetened with fruit. I'm talking dried fruits. I do not add any form of sugar to my diet, period. And if I see that there's sugar in something, I'll just pass on that specific item rather than utilizing sugar. Whether or not it's the unrefined sugars or not, I personally do not partake of sugar within my diet personally. From my studies, I realized that sugar causes fermentation, and as sugar is increased, guess what? It actually kills the T cells. And as a result, I realized that I don't need sugar in my diet. It is not essential for me to survive. Am I making sense there? So what I do, instead of sugar, I look at other alternative sweeteners, such as honey, maple syrup, agave nectar, brown rice syrup, cane juice, fruit juice concentrate. Those are items that I use to sweeten instead. Does that make sense, saints? Go on, number 3. You see, it says you take a slice or 2 of bread. And you can just put a little olive oil in it, or you can just go right ahead if you don't want to do olive oil and put some